It was a typical Friday night and I was bored out of my mind. I swiped through Tinder, a dating app I used more for amusement than anything else. The faces blurred together in a mix of forced smiles and awkward poses. Then, Emily's profile popped up. Her emerald green eyes sparkled mischievously, and her smile seemed genuine. We matched. Our initial conversations were surprisingly normal. We talked about our jobs, our favorite movies, and our mutual love for spicy food. She was witty, intelligent, and a little bit sarcastic, just the way I liked them. After a few days of messaging, I threw out the idea of meeting up for a drink. "I know the perfect place," she texted back almost immediately. The bar was called The Alchemist's Den, a trendy little speakeasy downtown. I spotted Emily at a table near the back, bathed in the warm glow of candlelight. She was even more stunning in person. Her long dark hair cascaded down her shoulders and she wore a simple black dress that hugged her curves. "You look beautiful," I said, trying not to sound too cheesy. She smiled, her eyes twinkling. "You don't look so bad yourself." We ordered cocktails. The conversation flowed effortlessly between us. We laughed, we debated, we discovered shared interests. For a while I forgot I was on a Tinder date. It felt like I was catching up with an old friend. As the evening progressed, I found myself becoming more and more enchanted by Emily. "I know a shortcut back to my place," Emily said, her voice barely a whisper above the music. "It's through the park, much nicer than walking along these crowded streets." I hesitated. It was late, and the park was probably deserted, but Emily seemed so sure, so confident. And I have to admit, the alcohol had lowered my inhibitions. "Sure," I agreed, "why not?" The air grew cooler as we entered the park. The sounds of the city faded behind us, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the distant hum of traffic. The path was dimly lit by flickering gas lights, casting long, dancing shadows around us. My hand brushed against Emily's as we walked. I felt a jolt of electricity, but it wasn't entirely unpleasant. "This is nice," I said, trying to break the silence that had settled between us. "I haven't been in this park in years." Emily stopped walking and turned to face me. The playful gleam in her eyes had vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. Her smile seemed strained, like a mask struggling to stay in place. "Oh, I know," she said, her voice eerily calm. "You used to come here with your high school girlfriend Sarah. You carved your initials into that old oak tree over there." I felt a chill run down my spine. How did she know about Sarah? Our relationship had been brief and tumultuous, ending years ago. We certainly weren't the type of high school sweethearts who carved our initials into trees. "Emily, what are you talking about?" I asked, forcing a laugh, trying to mask the unease creeping into my voice. "You've got me confused with someone else," I added, hoping to deflect her intense scrutiny. She took a step closer, her eyes boring into mine with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Don't play dumb with me," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "I know all about you, Jason. I know about Sarah," she continued, her words slicing through the air like a knife, "and I know about what you did to her." My blood ran cold and a shiver ran down my spine. Sarah's disappearance had been a mystery that haunted our small town for years. The police had questioned me, of course, but there was never any real evidence to link me to her vanishing. "I had nothing to do with it," I insisted, my voice barely above a whisper. I had moved on with my life, or at least I had tried to convince myself that I had. At least I tried to. "But the past has a way of catching up with you." "You're crazy," I stammered, backing away slowly, my heart racing. "I don't know what you're talking about," I added, my mind racing to find a way out of this confrontation. Emily pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen with a determination that made my stomach churn. A moment later, I heard a familiar ping, the sound echoing in the tense silence between us. It was the sound of a picture message arriving on my phone, a sound that now filled me with dread. My heart pounded in my chest as I pulled out my phone and looked at the screen, my hands trembling. The photo showed me and Sarah smiling, happy, a stark contrast to the current situation. It must have been taken from an old social media account, one I had long forgotten about. How did she get this? I wondered, my mind racing with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. "I told you I know everything about you," Emily whispered, her breath hot on my ear. Her words sent a shiver down my spine, each syllable dripping with menace. "And now I think it's time you knew a little something about me." Her voice was calm, almost too calm, as if she had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. Her hand shot out, lightning fast, and grabbed my arm. The suddenness of her movement caught me off guard, and I felt a jolt of fear. Her grip was like a vice. I could feel the strength in her fingers, each one digging into my flesh with an unyielding force. I tried to pull away, but she held on tight. Panic surged through me as I realized just how strong she was. Her face was inches from mine, her eyes blazing with a terrifying intensity. It was as if she could see right through me, into my very soul. "I've been watching you, Jason," she said, her voice a low growl, "following you, learning everything about you." Her words were like a dark promise, a vow that she would never let me go. "You can't hide from me." Her voice echoed in the empty street, a chilling reminder of her omnipresence. Fear, primal and suffocating, coiled in my gut. It was a fear unlike any I had ever known, a fear that threatened to consume me whole. My mind raced, desperately searching for an escape route, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. It was as if the ground itself was holding me captive, refusing to let me flee. Emily's words echoed in my ears, each syllable a hammer blow to my composure. This wasn't a game. She was unhinged, dangerous. I realized then that I was trapped, ensnared in her web of madness with no way out. Panic seized me. Adrenaline surged through my veins. I shoved Emily with all my might, sending her stumbling backward. She let out a surprised yelp as she lost her balance. I didn't hesitate. I didn't look back. I ran. I ran faster than I ever had before, my lungs burning, my legs screaming for mercy. The darkness of the park seemed to close in around me, the trees becoming menacing figures in the periphery. The sound of my own ragged breathing filled my ears, punctuated by the frantic thud of my footsteps. Behind me I heard Emily's enraged scream, a chilling sound that spurred me onward. I didn't stop running until I reached the edge of the park, bursting out onto the brightly lit street beyond. I risked a glance back. Emily was nowhere to be seen. The days that followed were a blur of paranoia and fear. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that Emily was always just out of sight, lurking in the shadows. I changed my phone number, deleted my social media accounts, and started taking a different route to work every day. Sleep offered no escape. Nightmares plagued me, visions of Emily's twisted smile and accusing eyes. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle outside my window sent a jolt of terror through me. I was a prisoner in my own home, too afraid to venture out for long. Desperate for a fresh start, I made a drastic decision. I packed a bag, withdrew all my savings, and bought a one-way ticket to a city hundreds of miles away. I told no one where I was going. I cut off all contact with my friends and family, hoping that would be enough to sever the ties that Emily might use to find me. For a while, I actually felt a glimmer of hope. The city was a welcome distraction, a vibrant, bustling place where I could blend in and pretend to be someone else. But the fear was a shadow, always following me, whispering doubts in my ear, reminding me that I could run, but I could never truly hide. One evening, as I returned to my tiny apartment, I noticed something strange. The door was slightly ajar. My heart leaped into my throat. I cautiously pushed the door open, my hand trembling as I fumbled for the light switch. The apartment was empty. Nothing seemed out of place. I told myself it was nothing, that I had simply forgotten to latch the door properly. But a knot of dread tightened in my stomach. I checked the windows, the locks, every nook and cranny. And then I saw it. A plain white envelope propped up against a vase on my coffee table. It was addressed to me, in an elegant cursive hand that I knew all too well. My fingers shook as I picked up the envelope. The weight of it was more than just physical. It carried an emotional burden that I could feel deep in my bones. It felt heavy, as if it contained more than just a piece of paper. It was as though the envelope itself was a harbinger of the dread that was about to unfold. I hesitated for a moment, fear warring with curiosity. My mind raced with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. What could be inside that would warrant such a foreboding feeling? Taking a deep breath, I tore open the envelope and pulled out the contents. The sound of tearing paper seemed to echo in the silent room, amplifying my anxiety. It was a single photograph, but it wasn't just any photograph, it was one that would change everything. A recent photograph of me standing on a crowded street corner, completely oblivious to the camera lens pointed at my back. The realization that someone had been watching me, documenting my every move, sent chills down my spine. And scrawled across the bottom in that same elegant cursive were 3 chilling words: "You can't hide." The handwriting was unmistakable, a cruel reminder of the past I had tried so hard to escape. A wave of nausea washed over me. Emily had found me. The name alone was enough to bring back a flood of memories, each more painful than the last. She was here, in this city, watching my every move. The thought of her lurking in the shadows, always one step ahead, was almost too much to bear. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a reminder of the danger I was in. This wasn't going to end. Ever. The walls seemed to close in around me, the city itself becoming a labyrinth of fear and uncertainty. My carefully constructed facade of normalcy crumbled around me, leaving me exposed, vulnerable, utterly and completely terrified. The nightmare wasn't over. It was as if my entire world had been shattered, each piece a reminder of my vulnerability. It had only just begun. The flickering light in the room seemed to mock my despair, casting long, eerie shadows that danced on the walls. I knew then that there was no escape, no way to outrun the past that had finally caught up with me.